As a fitness professional, you know the joy of helping others, and you know it's more than just fitness. We're training the whole person. Wellness coaching provides expertise that goes beyond fitness and nutrition. It's a holistic approach to helping others become their best selves while reaching their goals. To us, there's no greater joy than that. Join the fitness leader. Become a fitness leader. Become a certified wellness coach. Go to nasm.org/wellness.
You're listening to the Mindful Drinking Podcast with Derek Brown on the NASM Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Mindful Drinking Podcast, where we talk about tips and information that you can use to drink more mindfully. My name is Derek Brown, and I'm your host. I'm an NASM certified wellness coach, award-winning bartender, and author of Mindful Mixology, a comprehensive guide to no and low alcohol cocktails. And in previous episode, I talked about an acronym I use, which is really a set of strategies to drink more mindfully. And that acronym is RATE. And each letter stands for a group of strategies. So, for instance, the R stands for replace. And that can be pretty obvious. If you go out usually and you have cocktails, maybe you can switch those with non-alcoholic cocktails instead. They can be made just as delicious. In fact, in the last episode, we talked about mindful mixology. And I got a little bit geeky about it, how you can get in terms of the history of the cocktail and some of the sensory characteristics of the cocktail and how you can make this really great cocktail. Anyway, go back and listen to that one. The other letters are avoid, temper, and elicit help. And the E, or elicit help, is what we're going to be focusing a little bit more on today. And true to fashion, I've actually brought somebody to help with that, but we'll get to that in just a moment. I just wanted to add that there's a lot of times that I've been out drinking. I'm just going to be honest about it for myself. There's been a lot of times that I've been out drinking that somebody politely told me that maybe it was time to go home, and they helped me get into an Uber and I was off from the party or the event or whatever happened. And that didn't happen a lot, but it has happened a few times. And I have been that person for other people as well. So I'm sure that's happened to some of you too, that you've been out drinking, and no judgment here, but maybe you got a little bit tipsy and it was time to go home and somebody stepped in and helped you. And so when you think about illicit help, all I really mean is just using that same person earlier in the evening instead of late in the evening when you've already had too much to drink, right? So often that means getting somebody to go out with you, buddy, that buddy system to help pair with you, to maybe somebody who drinks in the same way you do, maybe somebody who doesn't drink, who you can check in with, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to get into all that, but I just wanted to clarify exactly what I mean. And sometimes it turns out that you might not have somebody there. And so there are other resources too. And one of those resources is mindful drinking apps. And there are lots of them out there, but we're going to talk today to Ian Andersen, who is the founder of Sunnyside mindful drinking app, which is on a mission to change the way that the world drinks alcohol. And they have helped over 300,000 people, which is an amazing number. And Ian has his own story where he's gone through a lot with alcohol. I'm going to let him tell it, but that led him to that moment. And so with no further ado, I want to introduce Ian Andersen. Welcome to the show, Ian.
Thanks so much for having me, Derek. I'm thrilled to be here. And that was a great intro. I love the way that you teed up illicit help for us, because I have some pretty strong opinions on that. And I think it's a really nice tie-in to what we're really trying to do here at Sunnyside.
Great. Well, I definitely want to hear all those opinions, and the stronger, the better. But let's start out with your own personal story, because, we have some similarities, but I know you've been through a lot, and I'd love to hear, if you're willing to share with us a little bit about what led you to creating Sunnyside.
Totally. I appreciate the opportunity to tell this. And I know from my experience at Sunnyside that everybody that works for us has a story that is a little bit similar to mine, whether it's their own personal story or in their family related to alcohol. It's pretty it's been amazing to learn that I'm not the only one that has gone through these pretty sort of radical experiences with alcohol in my family history. So I just want to recognize that my story is deep and painful, but it's also true that so many people experience this. I truly believe that, of course, we're creating a company at Sunnyside that wants to help people drink less, but also what we're doing, as you are as well, is trying to decrease the stigma around alcohol so that the everyday person that's drinking, no matter where they are on their journey with alcohol, feels more comfortable taking that first step to change. So my story, it's a little dark. So let's just say a few years after I was born, my twin brother in Northern California, I'm gonna put it around 5 years old because I don't know the exact timing, but my dad and mom both took up drinking pretty seriously, and they took their own kind of separate paths with alcohol that created a lot of division within themselves and the family. My dad was a carpenter, and he would come home and drink to kind of have a downer in the evening and relax. The way he described it to me was that his drink a night quickly turned into a 6-pack of night, quickly turned into a 12-pack a night. And I think this happened rather fast. And my mom, on the other hand, who was, I believe, somewhat spiritually troubled in her youth, she had gone through some challenges, took to drinking in a very private way. She became kind of a closet drinker, almost, in the most truest definition of that term. I have vague memories, but I know that she would go to her room and sober and come out completely drunk. And this was as I was going through some pretty formative years between, let's say, the age of 5 and 9. So this created a lot of turmoil and challenges within the family, a lot of fighting amongst the parents. There were I had some half brother. I have a half brother and sister too that were affected by this, but they had the support of their family, their father. So around the time that I was 9 years old, things really hit a fever pitch within what was happening in the family. It was basically my twin brother and I, and my mom and dad. And I have some of my first memories ever are traumatic memories of my mom drinking and getting herself hurt. I would wake up in the morning to find my mom passed out. I have memories of her actually hurting herself and bleeding because she was drinking and hurting herself. And my father wasn't in the picture at that time because he had made I kind of skipped a beat there, but he made a decision at some point to stop drinking because he was seeing what was happening in the household. So he, with the support of AA, which makes me truly grateful for everything that AA offers, found sobriety very quickly, but moved out of the house. While I had to live with my mom for a couple of years while she was continuing down her path. And his plan all along, his master plan, was to get us out of that house as soon as he could. So I don't want to belabor this too much, but essentially my dad took us out of the house because he got sober at 9 years old, when I was 9 years old. 2 years later, my mom passed away due to liver failure from alcoholism. And during those 2 years, I only saw her maybe once. And my life basically separated from hers at that point. And we don't know much about what she went through, but she found a sort of new support person in her life, a partner who enabled her drinking. And essentially she, somewhere along the line, decided that was going to be her fate. So when I was 11 years old, we were saying, goodbye to her on her deathbed. I know this is kind of dark, but this is my story, and this really does lead to the Sunnyside story. So that's the story of my mom. It took me years to kind of really process what had happened there. I think that's a little too young to understand what was going on, and it didn't really impact me when I was younger. But as I started doing therapy and looking inward in my 20s and 30s, I did realize how much that impacted me, and I'm still processing that. On the other side, so my mom took this path of like the worst case scenario with alcohol. My dad, on the other hand, took this path of sort of one of the best outcomes of problematic drinking, which was to find sobriety, and he did so with AA. So we kind of see like this split of two totally different pathways. That has been something that I've percolated over as we've gone down this journey of mindful drinking and starting Sunnyside. it strikes me, and I often wonder if my mom and dad could have had more positive outcomes if they had had other support systems or tools that I think are now becoming much more abundant these days, with the mindful drinking movement and sort of the harm reduction, the acceptance of harm reduction as an approach toward alcohol misuse. Um,
Right.
Worth mentioning too that my parents inherited their habits 100%. On my dad's side, both of his parents, my grandparents, died from alcohol related issues. On my mom's side, her mother, my grandmother, also died from alcohol related issues, and in a kind of a it's a sad pattern. My mom's mom died in a very similar fashion. She kind of shut herself off from the world and passed away after people hadn't seen her for a couple of years. Um, this this creates confusion as a young child. You don't really
Yeah.
know what the relationship is going to be with alcohol. I swore it off until I was a senior in high school, and then I tried it, and I liked it because it was this thing that gave me social lubricant. I was going into college, and more or less, I had a typical relationship to alcohol in college. Some binge drinking, some partying, some experimentation. Mostly not problematic, I would say. It never distracted me from my school. Um, and then I would say that where was I going with that? So, having sort of graduated from college, alcohol started impacting me more negatively into my early work years. And around 2018, I found that what a turning point for me on my own mindful drinking journey was I work in tech and like marketing. So somebody recorded a video of me for a promotional video where I was talking about the product. And I saw the footage and I told them, you are not allowed to use this. I do not recognize that person. That person is bloated and lacks confidence. And like they've changed from the person that I was expecting to be in this video. That came from joining this company that was doing well and starting to go out with colleagues and drink 2 or 3 days a week during the weekdays too. I mean, that is not a pattern that I'm proud of, but at the time, it kind of just crept up on me. I was having fun. I didn't feel like I was destroying my life. I was holding together my job well, my relationship well. But at that point, I decided I was going to take 3 months off of drinking just to get my health and wellness back in check and make sure that there wasn't something deeper going on there. Obviously, with my family history, there's always this nagging in the back of my head. Like, I cannot go down the path that my parents went down. That's unacceptable for me. So in those 3 months, I was able to kind of whip myself back into shape in terms of health and wellness, got back onto a routine, started to recognize the patterns of my drinking and how much I was relying on drinking in social situations and for having fun during the week. I was living in San Francisco.
Yep.
It really changed my approach to social situations and how I looked at my week in terms of what a Thursday or Friday or Saturday looked like. It was pretty profound.
Well, let me stop you there for a minute because
Yeah,
I think I just want to stop and acknowledge. I mean, that was a really difficult. It sounds like a really difficult experience. So I really appreciate that you were able to share all of that and so articulately, because I know that it must have been very emotional for you. So thank you for sharing that. And then, what I thought was so interesting is that you have these two extremes with your mother and your father, and then you find yourself in a sort of middle path, but also in a difficult position, which, I think is what a lot of people find themselves in. They might not necessarily be, drinking in such an extreme fashion, or, they might not necessarily need to go to AA, but they find themselves in the middle. And I think that sounds like where you were at, and taking a little break helped reset and give you that picture. Is that accurate?
That's 100% accurate. I at no point thought I was going to call myself an alcoholic. I also tend to think that term has some problems with it. The label of alcoholic, just really quick. Basically, my dad's no longer with us. He passed away last year, but
sorry to hear
thank you. To his last day, he was apologizing to my brother and I for being an alcoholic. And it felt wrong to me because my dad had stopped drinking 30 years ago and had become something totally different. But in the process of AA, and his beliefs with that system. He was once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, and he was always kind of felt like he was battling this uphill battle to make amends and get back on track. And I had told him many times, like, that's behind us. You are way more than what you were then. But something about that label that he carried with him through the end of his life, I found quite troubling. And so as a child, I always, it had this, it created this cognitive dissonance with me. Also, I mean, look, as like a 27-year-old in tech, that's drinking too much. I'm not going to, most people aren't going to go to an AA meeting. And this is one of the big fundamental principles of Sunnyside, is that there is this black and white approach to alcohol still. I'm sure you've talked about this, and I'm sure we've talked about this, but the way I'd like to put it is, if I'm walking down the street and I ask somebody random, like, hey, what would you do if you wanted to change your relationship with alcohol? I believe still most people would say, well, if I really wanted to change my relationship to alcohol, I would go to AA. Would you go to AA? They'd say, no, of course not, because I'm not an alcoholic. So there's a major education issue in terms of what options are available to consumers to make changes to their relationship with alcohol. For me, kind of going back to that 3-month break, I'm a habit tracker at heart. I already had like a spreadsheet where I was logging my daily habits. So by taking a month off, that was great. I basically just added a column of like, how many drinks am I having? And it was 0, 0, 0. So for me, my method was getting back to data and analytics and kind of getting back in touch with myself. I did decide to start drinking after that. And so now I identify myself as a mindful drinker. I don't love labels, but I love that one. And I'm a proud mindful drinker. And to this day, I still track my alcohol consumption in a spreadsheet and in the Sunnyside app.
Amazing. You're listening to the Mindful Drinking Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Brown, and we're talking to Ian Andersen, who is the founder of Sunnyside, a mindful drinking app. And we're going to get into that right now. Ian, I want to know obviously we've gone through your story, your very powerful story. And now I guess I want to get to the eureka moment where you decided, okay, I'm going to create this app. If you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's so serendipitous. My family history is something that I'm always going to live with. And at some point, I made a commitment to my brother, my twin brother, that we were going to make a generational change when it came to alcohol. Have I been perfect at that? Absolutely not. But our mission is, in our own families, is to make that generational shift. We will not be pulled down by alcohol. My brother now has a beautiful almost 5-year-old nephew, son, my nephew. And it's a topic of conversation that comes up often, that we want to make sure that these habits don't maintain. So I always knew that to be true. In 2019, I was taking a little bit of a hiatus off of work after traveling. And I always knew that I wanted to start a company. I'm kind of putting that in quotes because I had no idea what that meant at the time, but I wanted something that I could call my own. So coincidentally, my co-founder, Nick Allen, somebody that I had several drinks with in the past, that was kind of what we knew each other for, sends me a message and says, I'm in Mexico right now. I think I have an idea for a company, and it's a company that's going to help people drink less alcohol, but not focus on sobriety. Would you be interested in exploring this with me? So my first reaction was a little bit of nervousness. Like, do I have any right to be helping people build healthier drinking habits given my background?
Right.
And then the more I became more comfortable with it, the more Nick and I realized that, yes, we actually are the right people to do this. We work in tech. We know how we can create apps that help people. And Nick himself had his parents were both 30 years sober through the AA program. So we had a lot of shared experiences that led us to say, let's do this. Let's go all in on this. We tested the waters a little bit with some early ideas, and we decided to make it real around August 2020.
Okay.
Great. So that's sort of the origin story of Sunnyside, but I'm happy to get into more details there.
No, that's amazing. And since then, obviously it's grown to a huge amount of people. I mean, so how long now has Sunnyside been a company?
Yeah, so I just celebrated my 4-year anniversary in August, and then Nick has been tinkering on things a little longer. So I'd say about 4.5 years we've been in business. We started right when the pandemic was starting, which was totally just coincidence. It turns out that was a great time for starting a company around habit change.
Yeah.
Alcohol consumption was up in the pandemic, and people were taking to Sunnyside very quickly. So there was a little bit of a growth spurt in 2020. And since then, we sort of stabilized what our growth looks like and our company looks like. We knew that we had to build the best product out there when it comes to habit change around alcohol. So about 4 years in business, and gone through a lot of just learnings about how we approach mindful drinking, alcohol moderation, and how we run a business, because Nick and I are both first-time founders.
Right.
But what I will say, something that's going to be unwavering for us, is our mission will always be to help as many people as possible. Our new mission statement says millions of people. We're not quite there yet, but we think that by lowering the barriers to entry as much as possible when it comes to making change around alcohol, we can reach millions of people. We're going to make it, we want Sunnyside to be the digital app that where anyone can take their first step to making change.
Oh, that's great. Seems like you're well along the way. So definitely appreciate this. So let's talk about some of the ways in which this app, and in general, because some people may have the app or may not, but in general, how they can do things to help them drink more mindfully, especially when they're looking for help from others.
Absolutely. I obviously have a lot of thoughts about this. I'm going to stay out of the Sunnyside app for a second. So just imagine that everything that I'm saying is stuff that has inspired the Sunnyside app. And I think you'll get a sense for what we're trying to build. I'm going to give one of my personal recommendations. And it really ties back to one of the things you mentioned at the beginning about finding a trusted partner or friend who can create a partnership with you, or a balance around habits and around alcohol. My story is that in the early pandemic, I have a really good friend. His name is Mike, and our relationship, we've been friends for years, started to revolve around going to the bar and having whiskey and beer on Friday nights. And then the pandemic, it just destroyed that for us, because we couldn't go to bars anymore. Yeah. We decided that we were going to change. We were still going to hang out and meet on a weekly basis, but there wasn't going to be alcohol involved. And so we started to meet in Golden Gate Park and see if we could challenge ourselves to this. And it worked wonderfully. Instead of having these conversations in the bar where the next morning we woke up and said, hey, we had a great time, right? Yeah, we did, but we don't really remember the substance of the conversation. We went to spending just as much time doing more wholesome and meaningful activities and actually connecting and remembering what we were talking about. And that is a really strong memory for me. We ended up strengthening our relationship throughout the pandemic, and frankly, like learning a lot more about each other and enjoying our time even more. So I would say fundamentally, one of my most successful things around finding moderation in alcohol and just habits in general is finding a really good partner that you can trust. I think most people would be surprised how little judgment there is from their inner circle if they go to those people and say, I think I want to make some change. Would you be willing to support me?
Yeah, that's something I found for sure when I was really worried that everyone was going to be, upset at me that I let them down. But instead, what I got was a lot of support. But I love the point that you're making that you and Mike, first of all, I mean, congratulations, because there is an epidemic among men where we just don't have close friends, right?
Yes.
So many men are afraid to share and have that relationship, a sort of forward-facing relationship with another man. And I think that is part of the problem, but that's another show altogether.
I appreciate you saying that. I really agree and resonate with that.
Yeah. But I think that I also, thought, oh man, I'm going to miss out on all these great conversations that I had with my friends. And instead I found when I sat down with coffee or tea or on a hike or whatever, all of a sudden I had a different type of conversation. And, as you pointed out, when you remember, which is probably the best part of it. So I really resonate with that.
Yeah, I love that. And it just so happens that community is one of the fundamental pillars of the Sunnyside experience. When you join, you get access to give support and get support from people that are exactly in your same situation. So, and it's anonymized. So it's a really safe, non-judgmental, accepting space. So I can give a second really simple starting point for people that want to start drinking more mindfully or moderating their alcohol. And that's tracking your drinks. This is, if someone's listening to this podcast, they've probably heard this idea before. Personally, again, going back to my own story, I started tracking my drinking behavior in a spreadsheet before we started Sunnyside. That was pretty profound for me. So I was able to start seeing week over week what I was drinking. And by noticing that I was drinking more on certain days or certain times, I could correlate that to things happening in my life, whether it was a stressor or a trigger or even just social situations. Something about counting and being honest with yourself starts to ingrain, I think, habit change almost subconsciously. So again, no surprise, that's one of the first things we do at Sunnyside is have you start tracking your drinks. And what we do is we actually tell people to try not to focus on too much else for the first 30 days. Because if you get into a habit of tracking your drinks, whether it's in real time or the day after, you'll start to see something change within you. Even if your drinking doesn't actually start to put lower significantly, you'll start to understand these patterns and triggers. And eventually you can start to maybe consider addressing those as foundations to change your relationship to alcohol. So I really recommend people try tracking and, try Sunnyside. But if you don't want to try Sunnyside, because we do have a 15-day trial, but it does cost money, try on pen and paper, try on your fridge, try in your notes app on your phone. We're all for people making change and copying what we do at Sunnyside, because like our system is based in evidence and science. And it's quite thorough and comprehensive, but you can do a lot of this on your own. A lot of people do start things like tracking their alcohol consumption by hand, and then they join Sunnyside because they want a more comprehensive approach.
That's great. That's awesome. And speaking about the science behind it, I understand that you did have a third party sort of scientific review of what you all do. So I'd love to hear more about the results of that.
Yeah, of course. So last year, I believe, the kind of start to this story of understanding the impact that Sunnyside has on our members is we surveyed our members, which isn't a scientific survey by any means, but you're asking your audience, has Sunnyside helped you cut back on your drinking? In that survey, 96% of respondents said that Sunnyside helped them cut back on their drinking. And what we found was that, I don't have the exact numbers, there's pockets of people that were reporting 75% reduction, a pocket reporting 50%, and then 25%. The average came out to around 30% reduction on weekly alcohol consumption. But the point being that if 96% of our members are saying that they're drinking less after joining Sunnyside, the reason we're really proud of that is because people join Sunnyside on a lot of different areas of sort of the quantity spectrum of alcohol. Some people join us on the heavier side, middle, maybe right around the CDC guidelines, and some even on the lower side. The fact that across that entire population, we're seeing people report substantially less drinking is incredible. So we had to get some science behind this, right? We can't necessarily just count on these qualitative studies. So we partnered with a third-party university. It's not published yet, so I'm going to keep some of the details a little behind the scenes. But in that study that's coming out, we believe in September, it is an analysis of the impact of SMS intervention on alcohol cessation or alcohol reduction. And what it found was a 30% reduction in the first 30 days of usage across the entire population. So it effectively matched up exactly with our own internal studies. The really interesting thing about this study is that it was looking at SMS. And why SMS? Well, Sunnyside, even though it's an app, also uses text messages in complement with the app experience. And that's where we have you do most of your tracking and daily check-ins.
Right.
It's really become a pillar of what makes Sunnyside unique and really, really different. It creates this conversational, discrete approach to tracking your drinks. And also we use SMS to provide the pathway into our coaching with real humans. So that's the general data. We have studies on our, we have more analysis on our website where we asked people the impact that it had on their mental health, binge drinking, relationships, health and fitness, etc. And it's all quite impactful.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So what we also find is that we did a study after we launched a 30-day driest January challenge, was that a lot of people report the impact, similar impacts after only 30 days as they do after 90 days, even if they're kind of just trying to take a quick break from alcohol. So we support all types of goals and missions around your own personal goals when it comes to alcohol.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, in case that wasn't clear, I think it is. But in case it wasn't clear, you're not telling people not to drink alcohol. You're saying that perhaps this is an opportunity if they want to reduce or change their relationship with alcohol so that's more within their kind of their grasp, which is really what mindful drinking is at the end of the day. Mindful drinking is not telling anybody how to drink. It's just saying that often we, lose track of how much we drink, or we get peer pressure, or just out of habit or conformity, we end up drinking more than we intended to. And this is that tracking, that partnership is a way to keep yourself in check and make sure that you don't exceed your own set limits, because you set the limits yourself, which I think is a really important part of your app, an important part of mindful drinking in general. It's about a decision you make for yourself, not something that someone else does for you. But this is a nudge, right? Like essentially with these SMS texts, I've done it before. It's like a nudge you get, and it'll say like, how many drinks did you have last night? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm just kidding. And, so I think, in some ways it was weird. The app wasn't super helpful for me in one way, is I don't drink alcohol anymore. So that part of it wasn't there, although the community is still a wonderful part of it. So I don't want to say it's not useful for somebody who doesn't drink, but it is mostly geared for somebody who wants to change their relationship with alcohol. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, 100%. So we actually found when we surveyed our members that 15% of them do plan on quitting eventually, but the key is I think it's 98% said that they still are consuming alcohol on Sunnyside. We set out to create a platform that never pressures people to quit. In fact, we accept that most people who are already drinking aren't going to quit. It's actually a non-starter. If we tell them that we're going to get you on a path towards sobriety, most people aren't going to start using our app. Honestly, there's other apps for that actually fit better if you're focused fully on sobriety. But the key here that I've really been kind of honing in on lately is you don't need to know what your outcome is going to be before joining Sunnyside. I think that's really relieving to a lot of people.
Yeah.
You might be having 1 or 2 glasses a night, and maybe you haven't had a dry day for 2 or 3 years. We have people that tell us that they're not binge drinking, but they're drinking 1 or 2 drinks a night. They're getting older. They're starting to wonder if it's impacting their sleep, or maybe they don't know if it's impacting their sleep because they've sort of been in it. That's one sort of category, is like this daily habit drinker. They don't know if they want to quit or moderate or add in dry days, but we're going to help you find that. We get folks that are binge drinkers, and their goal is effectively like they don't drink at all during the week, but they know that as soon as alcohol touches their lips on a Friday or Saturday, it's sort of like hangover weekend for them. And they know that they're kind of ruining their weekends, and they need to get that habit under control. They still want to enjoy a drink every now and then in social settings, but they know that binge drinking is unhealthy for them. Right. Then, we do have folks that come to us that are definitely on the heavier side of alcohol consumption. And the non-judgmental part of Sunnyside is really important here. Even though some people might fit a profile where a lot of maybe other services might say your only path is to quit, honestly, we're not medical advisors at Sunnyside. So we don't look at that data and provide any judgment. What we do is give you a reduction path that you accept and you challenge yourself to try to hit. We have found a lot of heavier drinkers join us, scale back, and send us a message saying, you guys have been amazing because you helped me realize that I shouldn't be drinking anymore. You helped me gain that mental clarity, reset some baselines, and now I know what I need to do on my journey with alcohol. And Sunnyside isn't it. And you know what? That makes us perfectly proud and happy for that outcome, because our job is really to help people reset their relationship to alcohol and maintain that. If we help you realize that alcohol shouldn't be a part of your life anymore, better to you.
Great. I love the part about non-judgmental, because I think that is so critical. If you want somebody to help you, or you are helping somebody else, it is not helpful to be judgmental, right? So, if you're let's put it in more universal terms, if you don't have the app and you're out with a friend and that friend is like, dude, you're too messed up, and it is really making you feel bad, or you shouldn't have had that drink. I don't think that's going to help a person in the long run. That actually might even hinder or hurt the person. It's really that person who's open and saying, hey, is that what you meant to do? Like, let's talk about it. Let's talk it through, because if it wasn't what you meant to do, it's okay. But maybe now's a nice time to exit, So I think that's a great part of it. So with that said, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us? And certainly we would love to hear more about where we can get in touch with you.
Yeah, we are on sort of a diabolical mission right now to make our product really, really great. And that's one of our big focuses right now, is improving the product experience. So a couple of things that stand out. We recently launched our Android app, which hadn't been around. We had an iOS app. We have the SMS experience. So Android is now available, and it's fully on par with the iOS app. So that's really exciting. We continue to release new features and optimizations all the time now, which is way faster than normal. The one thing that I think is worth mentioning coming up is our Soberish October challenge. So we will be sharing that on our socials, on our website, and everywhere that we can. Last year it was, I'd say, a pretty big hit, considering it's not quite the dry January level of excitement. It's sort of like one of the stepchildren of dry January, but we're going to lean into it. And we think that these 30-day challenges are a way to further lower barriers to entry for people that aren't really sure what they want to do with their relationship to alcohol. Commit for 30 days. There's no pressure to quit. You kind of set your own plan. And we're hoping to get a lot of people in. And you get to join a community of people actually focusing only on that little challenge.
That's fantastic. Yeah, temporary abstinence challenges are awesome. We talked about that with Hillary Scheinbaum on a recent episode. Well, where can people reach you or reach Sunnyside? What's the easiest way to get in touch?
The easiest way is to visit our website. So it's sunnyside.co, but you can also go to the app stores and search for us. That's a super easy way to get started. And if you're not quite ready to sign up, I would really recommend following us on Instagram. We've been working really hard to build out the quality of information, and you'll see our podcast clips, all sorts of fun information that helps you kind of take the first step into the mindful drinking world. There's one more place people can get started if they're a little nervous, which is our Facebook group called The Mindful Drinkers. Should be super easy to find. And that has, I think, 35,000 people. We don't pressure you to download the Sunnyside app. In fact, we just wanted to create yet another community where people could take that first step. That community is flourishing. So if you want just some quick support and like motivation on your journey, I highly recommend checking that out.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing everything that you did, Ian. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. And for all the listeners out there, once again, thank you for listening. We're so grateful that you joined us, and we want to make sure that you know that we are looking for your comments. We are looking for your likes. We are looking for you to reach out. So please don't hesitate to do that. We always enjoy hearing from you. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today, and here's to drinking mindfully.